All right, folks. So right now we're running they were running a Honda GX690 for the air motor on the back of this flounder boat. So started hunting around on the marketplace because we needed a. If you look on this side, we're running an alternator off the side of it basically to charge the batteries, and that's what's going to run all the big lights on the front. That one there produces about 60 amps. The new lights that are going on it are going to need somewhere around 200 amps. We just don't think that GX690 is going to have enough power to run that big alternator and be able to push this boat. It's a 21-foot boat, so we started hunting around and came across one of these. Honda GX690, found it on the old marketplace. So my brother goes pick it up. I told him to take a compression gauge. He did. Stuck it on there, and yeah, one side got 120, the other side got 38. The guy selling it said he was a basically mobile on-site equipment mechanic. Told him, yeah, it's because the compression release valve on there. And he called me, and I said, man, I really am not 100% positive how that compression release system works, but yes, I do know it'll give issues on a compression gauge reading. I said, but at the price you're paying for it, you're probably going to be okay. Even if we got to put a set of rings in it, or a jug and rings and piston, you're still going to come out on top. So he went ahead and bought it. Got it back here. Yeah, that's all the Carnage. The first thing we did, like idiots, I forgot I had a leak down tester. So we set it on here, hooked it up to some batteries, and fired it up and ran it. And it started smoking like a freight train. The guy had overfilled it with oil by like over a quart over full. And it was actually drawing out of the crankcase vent and sucking oil straight into the carburetor. Got that figured out, drained oil out of it, got it down within the add range, and ran it a little more, cleaned the plugs. The plugs were just covered. They were solid black with oil. So we cleaned the plugs and ran it again, and it ran great. I say great. It ran good. There wasn't enough to make me suspect of a dead hole. So anyway, next day goes on, and I said, oh yeah, I have a cheap leak down tester. So we put that on there. Set right. This gauge would not move off of 0. So 100% leak down on one side, the side that he got the 38-pound reading on. Okay. When you're leaking down, it's going to come from when you apply air pressure to a motor, the air is going to come from one of 3 places. Only possible to come from one of 3 places. It's either going to come from the carburetor, meaning you got an intake valve issue, come from the exhaust, meaning you've got an exhaust valve issue, or it's going to come from the crankcase, basically your oil filler, the dipstick, so forth, so on. So to verify that I was at top dead center, I pulled the valve cover off of it and actually just took the rocker arms off, set them aside. So valves are all the way shut no matter what. Still, I mean, it's pouring, it's blowing out of the crankcase so bad. Yeah. So that tells you pretty much immediately you've got a serious issue with the piston, rings, something along those lines. So tore it down, and well, let's just show you what I found. So well, I'll tell you what, hold on just a second, and let me get you a light. Alright, in the cylinder looks relatively good. Carbon buildup on the valves, okay, I can accept that, but no deep scratches. I mean, it's worn. It's definitely worn. I'm going to assume this motor's been dusted. But I don't understand how you can get one cylinder down and the other one is fine. Whichever the case, you know, it is what it is. Pull the rings out of it. Let me find a good backdrop so you can see this well. Anybody see any problem with that ring? So if you look at the thickness, let me see if I can point you straight down on it. Okay. If you look at the thickness right here versus over here and right in here, it is, I mean, super thin over here and over here. Same thing on this ring. I mean, look at the differences in the thickness where it's worn in thin versus what it should be. Same thing, this one's worn here and here. As far as the cylinder is concerned, that would have been to the top and bottom of the cylinder was where it was worn real bad. So long and the short of it, a $26 set of rings and a $52 piston later, we'll be rebuilding it. It was highly advised that we tear this back cover off and check these plastic gears, make sure there wasn't no spider cracks in them. And speaking of spider cracks, there's a crack right there. I did not see that earlier. Right there. So I don't see any in the cam gear. But apparently these motors, if they run in a confined space and they get hot, these gears just shatter themselves. This is the oil pump, this is the governor, that's the cam gear. And apparently they just implode from these plastic gears. So check them. They seem okay with the exception of, I can see a little hairline fracture in that one. Right there. I don't know if that's going to show up on the camera or not, but there you go. Focus. So we'll be replacing those. Anyway, so that's pretty much what we found. Moral of this story: if you're going to go buy a twin-cylinder Honda GX engine, take your compression gauge and do a compression test on it. And if you have a cylinder that is questionable, whether it's compression release valve or not, it is very easy. It's two 10mm bolts. We'll take off the valve cover and expose the lifters. Or I mean, I'm sorry, they're the rocker arms. And these things are pinned on. And if you rotate it up to top dead center, these pins will just slide out and you can take the rockers off of it. You can do that and hook the gauge up, and if you're still getting low number readings, you're in bad shape. If there's an air compressor nearby, you can always hook air up to a cylinder and roll the motor over slowly until you get to top dead center. And if you've got air coming out of the crankcase, it's a ring issue. You might have some come out the exhaust or the intake, and that would indicate just needing a valve job. If it's a lot of air, it could indicate bent valve or broken valve. But you know, motors with a lot of hours on them like these, you might hear a little bit around the intake, especially because of carbon buildup. So there's going to be a bunch of video follows this, and it's basically me tearing the motor down and finding this. I put a snap gauge inside here and checked it with micrometers, and it is a half a thou oversized on one side. I ordered a honing brush. We used to always call them dingleberries, so I guess you'd call it a hone brush. Anyway, order one of those. I'm gonna put a light hone on it. I'm gonna throw a set of rings in it and a new piston. And this piston was egg shaped by same thing, a little over a half a thou. So I said, you know what, just for the price of them, let's just go ahead and replace it and be done with it. So we're going to put a new piston and rings. We'll hone the cylinder, and we're going to stick it all back together. I'll look into replacing these gears, get them on order as well. But you're still talking about less than $100 in parts. Something I am questioning is it doesn't appear that there's gasket on this anywhere. Where the jug mounts, which the head doesn't come off on these motors, at least not like the older Hondas. And I say the older Hondas, I think it's mostly Briggs that I work on, usually on generators and stuff. But the jug and the head are one piece. So there's an O-ring there for the oil passage, but that's it. It looks like black RTV on here, and I don't know if that's factory or if somebody's been in this motor before. I was told nobody's been in it, but I also was told it had good compression. So, you know, what do you believe? But, so yeah, that's pretty much what you're looking at, what we're dealing with. The rest of the video is going to be just basically me tearing this down and, kind of what it looks like tearing one down. So, it doesn't take long. Probably not 15 minutes. So, if you're looking at buying one of these, highly suggest taking it a very bare minimum compression gauge, but some way to hook air up to that cylinder. Usually half the compression gauge will allow you to hook air to it, but highly suggest you do that. And just beware when you're buying these motors, because this one ran, it idled great, it revved up, it made max RPMs, and it did everything like it was supposed to. You could not tell it was a dead hole by listening to it. So, just because it runs don't mean it's in good shape. That being said, stick around, and the rest of it will be tear down. Oh, yeah, look here. Went and picked one of these up from the Harbor Freight the other day, and literally the very first thing, I clamped a piece of aluminum in here and broke that completely. Yeah, it just snap broke. So I don't know if it's a casting issue or if I just put too much crank on it, but that sucks. All right, so here goes the rest of it. Thanks for watching, and man, I appreciate like, subscribe, any comments. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys throw out. Thanks again.